I saw you, you made a pretty interesting comment on Twitter. And
I try to do that daily.
yeah, well, no, it's fun. It's fun.
It is fun, isn't it? Tweeting. It's
Yeah.
it's
Well,
it's good news, bad news, isn't it?
well, you know what? Maybe I haven't found it, but people are going to know I'm on into the UFO thing, and I have a whole UFO project called Engaging the Phenomenon. And
Yep.
but I was surprised to find out, at least again in my own experience, like the UFO community, in within the UFO community, we kind of look at it like, oh my God, this is like Family Feud. Like everybody's disagreeing with each other and all this. But we have at least on Twitter, there's a really extensive community of researchers, that are constantly. It's like the Dharma overground on Twitter, and we call it UFO
Yeah.
Twitter.
UFO
You know,
Twitter. Huh? Yep.
yeah. But I haven't found that in like the Dharma world. There's no like Dharma Twitter that I'm aware of.
It's less formalized, but I mean there are certainly a lot of people connected on Twitter in the Dharma world. But yeah, I don't think it's like got a name like that exactly.
Yeah.
It's not the
Well,
same.
I
You're
don't
right.
even. I might be missing out because I mean the interaction on the UFO thing is like nonstop. Like I can like
Yeah.
look at my phone and there's like 50 new things in like
Yeah.
20 minutes. I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but
It
I
is
haven't.
different. You're right.
Yeah, I haven't found that kind of interaction in the Dharma world where people are. I mean, maybe it's just all on the Dharma overground or on like the stream entry subreddits
Hmm.
or something like that. But I haven't found it on Twitter at least. But
Hmm.
anyways, you on Twitter, you said well-known Buddhists notably are silent on the UAP UFO issue.
Hmm.
So where are you going with that? I mean, it's pretty
Uh,
straightforward, but
yeah, I just was wanting to make an observation, like just looking around and seeing like who's talking about this stuff in the Buddhist world, with the bombshell, drop the 2017 New York Times
yeah,
articles that, the one after other that came out, and then the recent report, that was released. It's like by the U.S. government acknowledging these things are real, and it's like crickets in the Buddhist world. I don't
yeah,
see any articles being written about that. I don't see people talking about it that much. It's just like a non-event, and that just occurred to me as being very interesting, like something to note. Like, why aren't all of these people who are so interested in consciousness and who are really working out of a tradition that acknowledges non-human intelligence as like a
yes, yeah,
core of its metaphysics, which okay, so part of the issue is that you have a very strong secular Buddhist movement of people who deny that karma and rebirth are even relevant today, so-called Buddhist modernists. So I think that's part of the reason it's not talked about, but still there are enough people that aren't Buddhist modernists that I would just expect more dialogue within our communities about these things and what the relationship is between what we're doing and what's happening over here. Because to me, there's a very clear Venn diagram overlaps between these communities: the psychedelic community, the UFO community, the Buddhist communities. Like they all intersect around certain issues related to consciousness and to
yeah,
non-ordinary experience. And the fact that so few people are talking about those overlaps is very interesting.
yeah,
And I don't know
yeah,
exactly what to make of that.
yeah. Seriously, I mean, I was fortunate enough to have Daniel Ingram. He came on Engaging the Phenomenon, and he spoke to it in his perspective, and I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, I mean, I see. I'm not acknowledged in the Dharma world at all. I'm kind of like an outsider in a sense. So I'd love to start that conversation, but I can't really because I'm just some random dude on the internet. But you can. So I really appreciate that you kind of just put it out there as a question. Um,
Yeah.
because yeah, to me it's an important topic. Again, we're talking about consciousness. We're talking about the fundamental layers of reality, right? If this is
Yeah.
objectively a real thing, it's it's surprising that people in the I guess the Dharma world wouldn't be at least interested and say like, where does this fit, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I
So
mean, there are some people that are interested, but they are like you said, they're fringe. There are people that are more on the fringes. Folks like Stuart Davis, who runs Artists and Aliens and the
oh yeah, yeah,
podcast, and
yeah,
he's a longtime Zen practitioner, and mutual of mine. And then there's Shaunesborne Hargens, who's also a longtime Buddhist practitioner, but just not a lot of like Buddhist teachers. People who are like considered to be authorities in the space. I don't see them talking about it. I think the Dalai Lama was like one notable like
yeah,
example of someone who was open to talking about it. And there's a great video on YouTube with John E. Mack, the Harvard psychiatrist
yes,
who got
yeah,
real into this. And he talked to the Dalai Lama about his experience or understanding of UFOs. And I don't think the Dalai Lama claimed to have any direct sightings or anything of UFOs or anything like that. But he had a more a kind of more helpful view of how to understand it than the standard materialist view,
yeah,
which is like, from a Buddhist perspective or Tibetan Buddhist, especially, you've got these like different realms, these three
yeah,
realms at least. And you've got this kind of normal, gross physical realm, and then you've got this more subtle realms of like form that's not so gross and solid, but it's more open and light and ethereal. And then you have the formless realm, they call the Dharmakaya, and that is this sort of without form.
yeah,
And that you could understand these phenomena like from that lens. Like you could see, oh, is this actually something that's happening in the gross world? Is it subtle? Is it causal? Like there's an actual like a more sophisticated way to apply that to the phenomenon, to understand it differently. It's like, is all this stuff all just objective and gross and measurable in some with equipment? Like not everything that people are reporting is like that. Like some of it's just like really interesting personal experiences and psychic encounters and things like that.
yeah,
But that doesn't mean it's not real unless you're a materialist. And I
yeah,
think one thing the Buddhist tradition, I think, could offer this conversation is just a better metaphysics of kind of how to
yeah,
work with these things, to let go of the insistence on everything having to be objective, measurable. It's like
yeah,
that, like everything that's valuable isn't measurable. Like we know
yeah,
that,
yeah,
like you can't measure your love for your partner, or your children, or your family, and yet
yeah.
it's like one of the most important things.
One of the things that's fascinating to me about the UFO subject is it's kind of where the rubber meets the road on physics and metaphysics, because it
Yes.
it it demonstrates both components sometimes simultaneously,
Yes.
where you have somebody has, say, you can say a subjective telepathic or ESP experience, but yet there's this physical object there in the sky that's objectively real. It's getting pings on the radar. It can be,
Right.
recorded. So to me, it's been fascinating, because obviously people might know I've had some of these experiences, and for me it was, um, I don't want to say it was a catalyst for my whole journey, not whatsoever, but it was, definitely a stepping stone on my path of awakening, so to speak.
Hmm.
Um, so but for some people, the phenomenon or the UFO subject could be a catalyst to kind of perceiving a greater reality, which ultimately you're going to end up with the ideas of the path of awakening when you're tackling those subjects.
Yes.
So
Yeah. I
I
mean, I
see it
think,
as like, no,
yeah,
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. Well, just the very fact that it's often called the phenomenon, or that we're now using that acronym, like unidentified aerial phenomenon, instead of an unidentified flying object, like
Yeah,
that to me represents a philosophical shift toward recognizing the primacy of experience in working with these things. It's a phenomenon. What do you experience a phenomenon? And a subject experiences phenomenon.
yeah,
It's phenomenology. It's a study of
yes, yeah,
experience.
yeah,
So I really appreciate seeing that in the UFO UAP space, of like the opening up to the importance of consciousness too. Like, and I was watching The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch recently, that history series,
yeah,
and kind of diving into the whole Skinwalker Ranch, which is a physical ranch in Northeast Utah. And it's so interesting to watch like these researchers come in. Most of them are like have a background in like some kind of material science, right? Like
Yeah.
astrophysics and things like that.
Yeah.
And they're coming in and they're doing hardcore scientific method, exploration. They've got all kinds of monitors and recording everything and checking all the, the electromagnetic frequencies. And, and there's one episode in the second season I just saw where they bring in a rabbi, to do like this sort of opening of a portal.
Yeah.
And they're open to the possibility that these spiritual teachers could actually know some stuff about this. And of course what happens is like a bunch of crazy shit starts happening when the dude does
Yeah.
his thing.
Yeah.
But simultaneously what's interesting I noted was as the rabbi is sitting there doing his thing, like the people that are gathered there are really see him as an instrument. Like he's an
Yeah.
instrument to see if they can trigger this thing that they can measure.
Yeah.
And then so much so that they take a recording of the prayer he did and tried to replicate the experiment the next night. And it's so interesting to me, like the mindset that would both see the possibility that consciousness and the direct working of consciousness with these phenomena could be related to them, but simultaneously is sort of thinking in very materialistic terms, like you could just take an audio version of what the dude is doing and that somehow is the same, that's actually replicating it. It's not replicating it at all because the guy was
Yeah.
not there,
Yeah.
and so to me it's like it's like an incomplete, it's an unfinished integration still that's
Yeah.
happening in that space. Like materialism is breaking down, but there's still a kind of, to me, like a grasping on to the metaphysics of scientism,
Yeah.
and trying to only understand these things in third person terms when like the personal and intersubjective dimension of what's happening is actually what convinces these materialists to like be open to the
Yeah.
phenomenon.
Well, and some of this, the new book, Skinwalker at the Pentagon, you
Yes.
know, these some of these again, like heavy duty scientists, rocket scientists, and what have you,
Yeah.
um, are some of the people that are having the experiences.
Yeah.
So they're
And
they're
each and every one of them are converts after they have them, right?
yeah, because I
You
mean,
can't deny.
one of them, he gets on the ranch and he sees, and this guy probably priorly is a materialist, and he sees a portal open up and some kind of entity come out of it.
Right.
That's going to change the way that you see reality.
Yeah.
And
And
again, that's why I think,
he's not like tripping on anything that we know of. Like he's not like
yeah,
ingested anything. Like he's just
yeah,
walking around having a cold stone sober experience of fucking portals opening up and entities emerging out
yeah,
of them.
yeah. And so that's what I find so fascinating about the UFO is that it's a way where the rubber meets the road between physics and metaphysics.
Mm.
And yeah, man, I'd love to have you on engaging the phenomenon sometime just to kick it about
Oh,
UFOs and
cool.
stuff.
That'd be
Because
fun.
yeah, and actually, you know what? I'm going to take this clip and put this clip on there as well, and
Okay.
because I think it's awesome, man. I love that. You know, I guess I can call you a public figure from the Dharma world is engaging with maybe me, a UFO researcher, an experiencer, but also the UFO subject at large publicly. I think we need more of that. And that's part of why I'm doing Engage in the Phenomenon, and that's why I'm doing the Meta Perspective podcast. So we can have these engagements instead of kind of like ignoring it. So I
Mhm.
really appreciate you being able to be part of that.
Yeah, my pleasure. I think it's something that we need to talk more about because it's just like it's such a big deal.
Yeah, the
And
implications. Yeah,
the implications are, yeah, I mean, they're earth shattering.
yeah, they literally,
Yeah.
from whether you're talking about a spiritualist or a materialist, a metaphysical standpoint, I think it kind of like breaks down all the barriers between all those worlds,
Mhm.
in some sense.